Hi, welcome. This is the CaddyInfo.com Thursday night Cadillac chat. Texas Jim is not with us right now. He may be with us later. It may not be. He's a scoundrel of a guy, and we'll just keep an eye out for him. Cadillac Jim is with us tonight.
Yeah, howdy.
Howdy, howdy. We may have other people join us. I like to send out invitations to a number of people, none of whom tend to show up, but if they do show up, then they're more than welcome. If you want to participate in the Caddy Info chat, let me know on Google+, because then I'll know that you know how to Google+, or post in the forum that you want to learn how to participate, and we'd be happy to help you with that, help you figure out what equipment you need and how to get it set up. If you want to participate right now, you can go to the Google+ event. I put the link there on the forum, and you can actually participate through Q&A, where you can put your questions in there live while we're talking. Now later, if you're watching this pre-recorded, we won't be able to respond to your questions because we're not here right now. But if you post them right now while we're live, we can include your questions in the conversation, and so then it's just like you're on camera, and so on.
Yeah, that's simple enough.
Not simple enough. And if it's not simple, ask me, because I can explain it to you. We've figured out how to do this, and we would love for you to participate if you would like to participate. Jim, I saw an article I just posted. One of the Lansing papers was asking, amid all the GM recalls, is now a good time for Lansing Grand River to be bringing out the ATS Coupe, the two-door ATS that we saw at the show, that's on its way out for production right now. What do you think?
Well, I think that it'd be nice to bring it out when people weren't reading about Toyotas and recalls. That may not be possible. I certainly wouldn't delay it more than a few days. But on the other hand, a bright, shiny new model that's really a whole new paradigm in chassis dynamics, a whole new concept for Cadillac. I'm excited. Let's bring it on.
Yeah, it takes long enough for them to filter out to the showroom, right? So I would say bring it to the showrooms as soon as you can, and people that are there at the Cadillac dealers looking for a CTS or an ATS are going to be excited to see that, right?
Absolutely. I kind of think the recalls may be more of a phenomenon among the talking heads than among the men on the street and women on the street. In other words, what looks like a big thing in the blogs and on the tube may turn out not to be such a big thing in people who have grown world weary of it.
Right.
I grew up in the car business, so I tend to make allowances for that. I was just having a discussion with Bruce before the camera went live about the numbers that GM was looking at and how picking out that ignition switch was like a needle in a haystack, and even the most presumptuous of forensics says it took them 3 years to notice, which is about right on any level.
Now the key thing in the recall, and you know, anytime people are hurt or people are killed, I'm nothing but sympathetic. But I want to try and explain what the recall's over. So my understanding, and I am not a GM engineer and don't plan to be. My understanding is the issue was if you had the ignition switch required a small amount of force to turn off. So if on your ignition switch you had a big heavy keychain, I don't have a big heavy keychain. I only have my remote for the Cadillac, and of course I actually have a keyless ignition, so I don't use a key for the Cadillac. But let's say this was the ignition key. So the issue was, if you had a big heavy keychain, there was a dynamic in which the weight of the keychain might turn the car off. The weight of the keychain might be enough to rotate the ignition switch and turn the car off. That was the issue. And if that happened, then you lost power steering, you lost power brakes. Cars, in some cases, skidded off the highway and wrecked and killed their occupants.
You also lost the airbags.
Well, that's surprising. I thought airbags had some residual charge that they would use to fire.
I would not put them on the ignition switch at all if I was a safety engineer.
So that's the key issue, and the thing that made it difficult for them to understand was this issue about it depending on the dynamic of what you had hanging off your keychain, right?
Oh, absolutely. And
And
I've had
so,
that problem all my life. I have, I've had multiple vehicles, and I tend to be very active, and I have lots of keys. In my '97, I went through 3 or 4 keys. I would wear them out in the ignition switch with the dangling stuff. In fact, I broke my keychains up into 2 keychains because the two
and that's
together was just too much.
each one of yours is too much, in my
And I'm
humble opinion.
retired now.
Yeah,
So basically, I had a problem. But what I do is I just go buy a new key. When I turn that key, and I'd get this wordy engineer message that this is you had a bad resistance after good resistance after bad, or something like that. Well, then
yes.
I would just go have another key made. And so I went through like 3 keys that way. So
Now all the current Cadillacs, I think, are, even the Escalade has gone to a push button start. So knowing what the recall is about, and lately GM also Cadillac recalled the SRX because of a acceleration hesitation issue. But knowing what the recalls are about, would that shade your wanting to buy a Cadillac or not at all?
if it was something like, well, why did they put the gas tank as a buffer between the rear bumper and the body? That would concern me.
And turn the U-bolts on the transmission back to face the gas tank. Somebody
I
said
haven't
that.
thought of that. That's a good
Somebody
idea.
said that in something I was reading, and they said that was one of the problems with the Pinto was the
What is it?
U-bolts on the transmission were rotated 90 degrees so that they didn't drag, but then they literally acted like spears pointed at the gas tank. So if you compress the gas tank forward, then it was sure to explode.
You mean on the rear axle?
Yeah.
Yeah. God help us.
Yeah,
Well,
well, I've got U-bolts on my mind and doing a lot of U-bolt searches because of the recent U-bolt excitement on the Roadster, and that was one of the commentaries I saw. Okay.
well, okay, for something like an ignition key thing where all you have to do is, like GM said, to completely relieve themselves of all liability, take the other stuff off and use the key by itself. If that's the fix, well, then I would say, and they have the recall, I would say, wow, there's no problem here. These
Well,
things happen.
well, but that's the answer if you were buying a 1990 Cobalt, right? But I mean, if you're shopping for a Cadillac today, would this have any impact? Would this
No,
give you pause?
no.
Because I know for me, shopping for an ATS for my wife, this gave me no pause, right? That I went out and I knew we wanted this, this, and this, and we went and bought the car, knowing that all this recall stuff was in the news, but I wasn't concerned about it because it didn't have anything to do with the ATS.
Well, let's see. I can't remember. Was there a recall in '97? I don't think so. There was one in '98 over the regulator and the alternator would short, and they recalled that. And let's see, in the 2011, I think there were a couple of little things on the drivability or something like that early on. I'd have to go back and look at the bulletins,
The
but I got my
drivability
car.
of the CTSV.
Well, yeah, I think
And
there was something about, I don't really recall, I'm fuzzy on that. I went and researched the car long before I bought it, and I found a site where anybody can file a complaint, and it's there forever. And I had some guy say that he was driving around in a spirited manner, and the side airbags went off, and he was not in danger of rolling over, and he thought that everybody ought to know that the CTSV could do that. Well, la-dee-da, so his accelerometer got confused when he was quote unquote driving in a spirited manner. Okay, I'm certainly enlightened to know that. I don't think that's going to ever happen to me, and if it does, I'm just going to have a good life and haul out my checkbook for several $1,000s.
I don't let them pay for it. Yeah.
Well, at any rate, you see where I'm going with this.
Yes.
I saw several other things like that look like people let the tires get low and then complain that a pothole cut the tire.
Right.
Stuff like that.
Yeah, I think the city has a rule for that, right? That if within the previous 90 days you have informed them that a pothole was there and was of danger, then they might consider reimbursing you if the pothole destroys your tire.
Well, I think I could deal with that. That doesn't sound reasonable to me, but there's certain, like I remember in Rhode Island when I was there, there was discussion about using the potholes for radioactive waste because they were bottomless. But nobody ever took that seriously. But the CTSV has such, they're very low profile tires, but they're very wide, and they will take a pothole quite nicely. Thank you very much. I'd have been more worried with the Eldorado.
Now, I was looking at, I watch all kinds of used Cadillac things, and I was looking at a little pickup truck, and they said it was a resto mod with a 500 cubic inch Cadillac engine. And I said, well, that may actually be just the thing. That would be a fun little thing to have around. You'd have it as a pickup truck, and you have a 500 cubic inch Cadillac engine. That sounds great. Then I realized the engine was in the bed of the pickup truck. So it wasn't a pickup truck at all. It was a rear engine resto monster car.
No, I was sure it wasn't just an old engine loaded in the back of a pickup truck. And the truck
No, they showed there's nothing under the hood.
Oh, nothing. Oh, it had
the front hood, and there's nothing. There's a shelf.
Oh, I didn't notice that. I just saw that the whole thing was such a beater. I wouldn't go near it.
Yeah. Well,
it was a Bondo King.
Yeah, so it wouldn't work as a pickup truck at my house apparently.
No, it would have been a little back heavy.
Yeah, more and the no windshield wipers, and he explained why he didn't need windshield wipers because he used Rain X, but no windshield wipers means no inspection in Texas. Yeah. And so that won't work.
Well, Rain X doesn't work till you're going 70 or 80 miles an hour either.
Now here was a question I had. You are required, and I studied Texas Department of Transportation law very closely on this topic and could not decide. It said you must have a windshield wiper. It did not say you must have a windshield.
Well, that makes sense. Because if you don't have a windshield, why should you have a windshield wiper? Put the windshield wiper on the headlights where it belongs.
Well, exactly. But here was my thought is I still someday want to have a fold down windshield like on the Roadster, on the Duke, like the original had. Mm-hmm. And I think just leave hook up the windshield wipers so they stay on the fold down windshield. And
that sounds legal to me. Sounds legal.
Now, you probably have to wear goggles. I think that would be because the motorcycle rules say you have to either have a face glasses or goggles.
Yes.
One of the three.
Very reasonable.
So I think you'd have to have some eye protection if you didn't have the windshield in front of you. And I'm willing, given that I wear glasses anyway, I am willing to comply with that rule.
Yes. Yeah, they'll accept ordinary glasses as long as they're not little thin hippie slits or something.
Yeah, that wouldn't work.
Yeah. But they've accepted my glasses with an open face helmet, this was a long time ago. I've worn face shields and full face helmets for many years now, but I ride a motorcycle if people want to know where that comes from.
Exactly. That always tickles me because you don't look like a motorcycle guy, but clearly you are.
Well, I've been riding since the president was from Texas.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And the next one may be from Florida, but we'll see. Let me ask you.
At this point, I would believe almost anything you told me at this point.
Which upcoming Cadillac are you most excited about? Which one gets your blood boiling the best of the upcoming models? And I can recite them if you need me to do that.
No, there's only one that really, well, there's several that I would like very much to get a hold of. But, of course, the new CTSV, for reasons I've already explained, last week. I'm very excited about the lower weight, the next generation chassis dynamics, and the next generation LT-based engine of unknown aspiration, whether it's going to be turbo, supercharged, or what, nobody knows yet. Do they have a supercharged Corvette engine out yet on the LT?
Yes.
Well, then it'll probably be a supercharged LT, but we don't know that for sure. We don't know anything because there's been no hint. But the ATS is a very exciting car to me. I also like the V Sport with the twin turbo V6. And although I would be tempted to look at the ATS with the manual transmission if it was a weekend car. A daily driver, then I'm really less interested in the automatic, and I would go with the turbos.
So the next generation CTSV, certainly I resonate with that.
Number one.
So Now the CTS V Sport, of course, is out right now, so
Hmm.
you could go see it. The ATS V we're waiting to see, which may be the twin turbo V6 ATS, is everybody's guess, right?
Hmm.
Which would merge those two cars together. And as you say, I'd like to have a manual ATS out. What about the LTS though? You're not that excited about the big car?
No, not really. I never did like big cars.
Yeah, even though I don't think I would write a check for $120,000 for a new LTS, and I think they're going to hold their value pretty well because Cadillac's only going to sell 200 or 250 of them. That's my prediction, by the way.
Hmm.
You can quote me today on May the 8th, 2014. Bruce predicted 250 LTSs would sell.
Hmm.
But, and I don't think they need to sell more than that. They just have to have it somewhere on a showroom somewhere.
Well, they can use the high end, the over 100K business model that the everybody else in that market does, where they do not set up a high rate production line with a high burn rate to build those things. They're built by
Right.
hand. They cost a lot more to build. That raises the price, reduces I've got. I'll just check the caller ID. Oh, I'm going to have to take this.
Okay,
Could you mute me, please?
I will. I think you can mute you too, but I have you muted. So I'll carry on the conversation just as if you were listening. So we saw the LTS, or we think that it's going to be called the LTS. We don't know yet. We saw the LTS previewed as the El Mirage uh, show car, and we expect that we're going to see the same thing when it comes out for the production version. I think of the upcoming cars, the ATS-V is probably the one I'm the most excited about seeing because that one may be on my shopping list for next car. I think the CTS-V, unless they get the miles per gallon up, probably I'm going to go to and if they hold the price up. So if the CTS-V moves up to 75 and they bring the ATS-V in at 65, then probably a year or 2 years after they have it out, then I could get that on my shopping list. That the price would be down to where I could and I'll be in the market to search out a replacement for my STS-V, and so the ATS-V may be right in that sweet zone of coming out if it comes out this year. If it's delayed further until next year, then I may very well be looking at a CTS-V Sport to replace mine. The CTS-V Sport offers everything I'm looking for right now, and a nicely used one after the prices have had an opportunity to fall would actually work pretty well for me. Again, if you're watching along and you want to participate, we have the Q&A window open, especially now that Jim's offline. Then we'd love to have your questions. If you want to participate live, signal me on Google Plus. You can actually hit the +1 on the event, and then I'll see that pop up in my action list, and I'll know to invite you. Or you can friend me on Google Plus and let me know that you want to participate. If you're looking for the link to the event, you can go to our chat message in CaddyInfo.com and find the link to the event there. One of the things that, as Jim mentioned, we opened a different subforum on CaddyInfo.com for classics and replicas. It's found down in the 19th Hole Lounge and member introductions as a sub forum within that, so that as you may know if you follow the forum, my late father left me a 1939 Jaguar SS100 replica, so I've been posting a stream about that, and then some other Duke owners have joined the conversation there. And these are kind of orphan cars where there's not a lot of places to find out information about them, or certainly to chat about them on the great wide interwebs these days. And so we're taking advantage of the availability of that subforum on CaddyInfo to have more side conversation there. I did see a note from Tim Carroll over at Carroll Cadillac that he had gotten an XLR EV in for repair and restoration. So that's going to be fun to see how that turns out. I guess they had a problem with their engine, and so he's going to get them their engine um, put back together for them, and maybe he'll also be doing a performance build on that one. I think all he said on the he had posted a thing on Facebook. I think all he said there was that the car was in and he would be doing a refresh on it, and that he would post some more about the restoration thread on his in one of the as a separate thread on the Carroll Cadillac .com forum on their webpage. Hopefully, I'd like to see him actually post different restoration threads within his subforum on CaddyInfo, but we're not there yet. And so I'd been grabbing up some of the Facebook info and posting those for him to try and model, give him an opportunity to see that, but we're not there where we get that information flow yet.
I'm back.
And see, you were able to unmute yourself. I thought I had muted you, and so I'd have to unmute you, but welcome back. I was just saying I wish that I saw Carroll Custom Cadillac has an XLRV in for repair, and he had posted a note on Facebook. I'd be happy for him to post individual restoration threads on his subforum on CaddyInfo, but we're not there yet.
XLRV for repair?
For repair, yeah. So that's
Carroll Custom?
Yeah.
Is he just doing a detailing on it, or is he repairing the drive line?
No, I think he's repairing the engine. I think he said it came in broken and
Really?
Came in on a car shipper, and that he's doing some repair on the engine.
Yeah, that's the first one I've ever heard of. Well, the 4.4 liter braking, but I'm sure it happens. There are a lot of them out there.
And we don't know if it was purely stock, or if it was running extreme boost, or if they ran. We don't know details.
Most of the problems I've heard of have been supercharger bearings, and those have been due to people bending the shafts, changing the pulleys.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I had seen some description about you have to be super careful about how that's done. He says it's a complete rebuild and go under the knife in a few days. It'll be posted on the custom build page. But yeah, it came in on a car carrier.
Well, that's sort of an indication that it was a problem. Are you seeing my face now?
I did before I flipped away. I
that's
do see your face when you're talking.
Yeah, now the at least the automatic's working. I was seeing it's not working for me. But
now the automatic does work on my end. That when I talk, it flips me up on the main screen, and when you talk, it's flipping you up.
Well, I think that's good because you're running the call, but for me, I always see your face, which is probably good because
scary.
You're who I'm talking to. So.
That's scary. No, it's that thing about who's running the call. It behaves a little differently. You're right, whether you're hosting or not hosting. And I'll work harder on getting some more people on so that you guys don't have to carry the conversation every week. So we're headed back to. I've got another road trip this weekend. We're going to run out to Arkansas to pick up some furniture. And I'll try and get some more info about the Austin collection there. I still haven't heard any more excitement about the Austin collection, which makes me think we're going to have to break it up and sell the 3 cars individually and then all the repair parts. And so I'll have to get set up to do that. But the little pickup truck, and I'll have to see. I was laughing because I think I got too big a truck. We got a U-Haul truck, and I need maybe very little furniture that we're bringing back, and so I was trying to decide whether we could pick up the little Austin pickup truck and set it in the back of the U-Haul or not. That probably weighs 700 pounds or 900 pounds or something, but to start bringing those back one by one, and then but I have to pick a time that my wife's out of town and doesn't catch me at it. Because of course I've got the Jaguar replica in the garage. My car's out on the pad. Her ATS is in the garage, and so there's nowhere to work on another one.
Well, I had a friend with an English Ford one time, and another friend and I were giving him a bad time, so we both got around to the rear fenders and lifted the rear wheels off the ground, and he couldn't move.
There you go.
That was an Anglia, I think.
This would be lighter than that, so perfect.
Oh yeah.
Maybe we can just pick up one end and then drive it on.
Bunch of high school kids, including me, tried to run off with somebody's '54 Chevrolet one time, but we never could get the front wheels off the ground.
Well, I wondered if I could take that. You remember the car hauler I brought the Jaguar back on? I wonder if I could put the 3 Austins sideways on that, with their tires on the 2 rails, if you see what I mean.
They'd have to be
and
awful
bring them
short.
all 3 back. They're awful short. The short they've got. Short they have in spades. What they might not be is they might not have they might not be wide enough to go on the right way. In other words, the gap in between the ramps may be not narrow enough for them. But somehow I'm gonna have to sort that out another day. But what this will do, we'll get down and bring back a couple of pieces of furniture, and then that will clear my responsibility on that topic, and then let my siblings take care of the balance of the thing there.
Well, those Austins and the parts altogether amount to a treasure trove for somebody doing Austin restoration or maintenance.
Yeah,
I would try to sell the 3 cars and the parts as a unit.
Me too, and that's why I posted them that way on Craigslist. I have not posted an auction on eBay. That I found a great deal of material. My dad, bless his heart, kept notebooks, and so I've got a notebook about the Roadster that has all the detail you could possibly want. It has every correspondence he had about the car. It has the information about the car in the front. And so, very nicely done, Dad. And then there's other books that these old cars had English standard screws on them, so he had a whole different book just on that topic. So he had one book on.
There's several kinds of standard English screws of that period.
Yeah, he had one book just on fasteners. But I appreciate here. This book was just on parts and spares. So any parts he bought, then they went into this book. And another book was just on, I loved the way he thought. This book was just on skills. These were like, if you needed to repair a block, he would capture articles, the art of extraction. If you broke a bolt, he captured articles off the web and printed out. So if you broke a bolt, here's different ways to fix it. If you had to strip threads, here's how to fix it. Rod bolts and pre-stressed bolts, here's how to deal with them. So articles about just skills that you might need, then he would grab those and print them out. And so I love the way that this is the service bulletins. He printed out all the service bulletins over the years for Austin Americans. And so this has, and I loved I was reading through some of there were letters to the dealers. I was in Florida a few days ago. This is from American Austin, November the 29th, 1933. All dealers. I was in Florida a few days ago, and it sure seemed good to see Austin cars so thick in the cities and on the highways. The high gas tax had something to do with it, but live dealers had more, and distributors with complete stocks of cars had still more. After all, a car sale isn't very profitable if the car cannot be delivered when it's wanted. The competition angle as regards prices looks to be more simple than for months past. The president of General Motors last week made a statement that all General Motors prices are going up in amounts ranging upward from $50 on the models in the $500 price class, which can only be interpreted to mean that Chevrolet is going to be at least $50 higher in price. It will probably be ballyhooed as larger, more luxurious, more powerful, improved, knee-action front wheels, etc. Fine for us. If it's larger, it's more expensive to run, and we again score on economy. If it's more powerful, we score again for the same reason. If it's $50 higher, we go back to the old price differential in spite of the increases, which NRA has made imperative for all of us. NRA, there would be new car rules, NRA. Do you remember what NRA would have stood for?
No.
NRA in 1933.
It would have been a depression agency, probably.
Oh, yeah, you're right. The NRA was you're right. it had to do with rebuilding the economy, right? Getting people jobs and so on.
Hmm. I would bet
There'll
on
be
it.
a lot of talk about independent springing of front wheels, knee action, as Mr. Sloan calls it. It's a good idea to have either front wheel free to move up and down without distorting the frame. In fact, it's so good an idea that Austin has had front wheel freedom for 9 or 10 years. And its advantages have been apparent to everyone on this first ride of Austin. Fine business. We've been at it for years, and in a
That's right.
much simpler, more foolproof form than the new ideas we hear about.
Yeah, their front suspension was similar to the Stingray rear suspension, if you'll recall.
So, and it goes on and on. So all this stuff, I love that he captured all this stuff and saved it, and so I would have been able to pull it up. But you're right. If I were an Austin guy and wanting to restore cars, this stuff is invaluable, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
I mean, everything you captured here is here's British tools and fasteners. You can't see the label
There
here.
you go.
British tools and fasteners. So this has just all info, and it's all. This is going to be really hard to see, but it's all. He's plastic coated the pages, so you can have them out in the shop and laminated. That's the right word. He's laminated the pages. Here's a 7 workshop. This is a bill that he got, where he'd ordered parts from the UK. These guys were in Elms Cross Street, Frome Road, Bradford on Avon, Wilts, British BA 152EA. So these guys were in the UK, and they shipped the parts to someone in Omaha, Nebraska, who sent them on to my dad.
Well, that's interesting. The American Austin had its own factory, and the engine was a mirror image, and not all the parts.
Exactly. Well, he had a mix of English Austin parts and American Austin parts, and
I think the
he built up a trove.
Chassis, they were all the same, even though here the threads might not have been the same.
Interestingly, the American Austin guys never sold enough cars to pay any license fees to the English Austin guys, which was terribly unfair, if you ask me. So I'm with you, English Austin. If you're out there listening, I wish you'd made license fees from that. Everything could have been different.
Well, when Datsun got started and started making Austin 7 copies, there's some disagreement as to whether it was under license or just a knockoff. Because
right, I think at first it was a knockoff, and then the Austin went and talked to them, and they agreed to build them under license.
Oh well, that's
after they saw that they sold. Let's wait and see if it sells first. Both Austin and Datsun could wait and see, because if they weren't going to sell, who cares?
Well, I've always liked Datsuns. Hate to say it, but ever since the 240Z and the Fairlady and those, I've felt like they really understand sports cars.
Now, all this said, this worked out the way it worked out. That I always felt bad that the Jaguar replica is not a Cadillac of some sort.
Yeah.
And so I keep posting about it, but it's not a Cadillac. But that's the way life works out sometimes. I, of course, continue to drive my SDSV every day, and we're a 2 Cadillac family now with the ATS and the SDSV. And so I don't want people to think I'm not a Cadillac guy, because I'm still doing the Cadillac thing. It's just if you follow the story along, then my late father had started eBaying. He loved the old Austins, but he'd found this Jaguar SS100 replica and picked it up. And then when he was very ill, he wanted me to have that, which I appreciate. And he spent every scrap of information I posted on the forum. I would tend to write articles, add to that post on the forum, and then I would put that in an email and send it to my dad. He took every scrap of information I sent him and would build it up into spiral round books, just like not these bound books, but actual not these notebooks, but actual spiral round books. He would build it up and read through and pour over. And if I hadn't sent him a Jaguar update in too long, he would send me an email and let me know I wasn't reporting. And so he thoroughly enjoyed and he was so surprised because it hadn't been running for an extended period of time, and we brought it back to Plano and got it running that day. And so he was quite surprised that it worked out that way. and it turned out that it was relatively simple. He thought it had one problem, which was a fuel pump. He'd actually fixed the fuel pump properly, but he didn't realize that it had another problem with the carburetor, and that you had to kind of goose the throttle to get the carburetor to stay running. And so I was able to do that until I could get the carburetor replaced, and then okay. Okay, so we had a conversation about, let's get back on our main topic, of course, which is Cadillacs. We had a conversation about which car you're looking forward to the most. Now, I had this email that you helped me with about where the fellow said he had trouble reading codes and was thoroughly unhappy that our code reading page did not cover Eldorados. And so if you feel comfortable about your code reading advice, I'll take that and add it to the code reading page so that we don't have that problem.
Well, I'm hazy about 2000 to 2002, and also 98 and 99, I believe the Eldorado did not change their computer, even though the Seville did. But generally speaking, like 92 to 96, that includes the 4.9, as well as the North Star, it's the same as STS. But in 98, the STS changed platform. I don't know if they changed the computer on the Eldorado to match, but they had to in 2000 because of the engine change, the ECM change. So I'm hazy on whether they use the 97, the 93 to 90 or 96, 97 Eldorado computer scheme in 2000, 2002. I can find out by looking in my. I've got the shop manual for the 2002.
Well, that's where I thought that's what you posted here. Now
No, it's from the 97. Everything I have.
Could you tell exactly which year his car was?
No, I could not. It did not look like a 97 unless the wheels weren't standard.
Yeah, they ran a range there for a while where they weren't different enough for me to be able to pick out. He actually looked like he had 96 STS wheels on it, not original Eldorado wheels, because the Eldorado had a different look to it.
They tried to get me to use 96 wheels on my car when I bought it new. They said they were more desirable. They threw out all kinds of BS like that, and I just kept saying, like I told you, I went there to buy a Corvette, and I just bought the North Star because I really wanted one, and the Corvette people wouldn't put the nose in there and wouldn't deal.
Yes.
And so I ended up with the ETC, and I bought the ETC because it weighed 250 pounds less than the STS and was 0.2 of a second quicker, 0 to 60.
Right.
And so it was the fastest car I could get from Cadillac that year. And I don't think I'd have driven a 98 Vet for 15 years, but I love that Cadillac for 15 years.
Right.
And it was still, daily driver 10 to 15 years. But anyway, I'll research the 2002 and see if it changed. If it changed, I'll talk to Mac. Mac will have the details, and I'll trim up that material and so that it passes muster between me and Mac, and assuming Mac cooperates, which I'm sure he will, and then we'll get it on the page. And
okay.
If Mac helps, we can credit both of us on it.
Well, clearly the reading codes page is that's one of the old hard-coded HTML pages, so we actually need to get it updated to where it points at one of the blog pages instead. And so once you guys decide, I was going to go edit it while we were chatting, but I'd have to open up my HTML editor and da-da-da, so I'm going to leave it there. But once you guys decide what we need to add, then I don't want the Eldorado guys to feel left out on any topic, because certainly they're part of the Cadillac family.
I would hope so. They're the flagship, sort of, the image leader. I mean,
yes, exactly. And unfortunately, I leave them out by omission just because
numbers,
a lot of things that are working on the Seville worked on the Eldorado of the equivalent generation Eldorado.
Yeah, the only difference was 6 inches on the wheelbase, and a few things in the PCM.
Yeah, they kept them in parallel for a long time until they stopped updating the Eldorado for whatever reason. I never understand why they abandon cars and don't keep them refreshed.
Well, they never did. Two-doors were just not in vogue in the 90s. People weren't buying any two-doors to speak of. The Eldorado just didn't have the sales to justify a new platform. And it would have taken a new platform to maintain the wheelbase difference. They could have just made a two-door Seville and called it an Eldorado, but they chose not to do that because the existing Eldorado was really, a pretty nice car. And I don't think the change in platform was that much of a step up. It increased the weight 250 pounds, decreased the exterior size, left the interior room about the same, and it made it about 2/10 slower, 0 to 60, and it was a more solid car. But they also did away with the fender braces, which you really needed, but you didn't need them unless you were looking at track times. So and people that had them really weren't looking for those fender braces. They were available for a couple of years as parts. You could buy them through the parts department, but
Right.
they got hard to find. And so I really don't think it was. I think it was really a matter of the platform update for the DeVille, and they decided to move the Seville to it too. And they orphaned the Eldorado. So that may have been part of the logic in not moving the Eldorado over to it. It's really not a good idea. The existing platform is better for the Eldorado with its shorter wheelbase and so forth, and slightly lighter weight in the first place. So they just left it alone, but then they really had marked it as a car that they would not update anymore. If they actually said so when asked, that there would be no further updates.
Yeah, it's a shame that, and of course I'm always appalled though how much money they spend on meaningless updates in some cases where they'll say, we changed 223 things and it cost us $24 million, and then you look at the car side by side and can't tell what changed.
Well, if they'd kept it 2 more years and it had been an Eldorado V, would that have been attractive to you instead of your car having an Eldorado?
Well, and I do wish that they'd done that where they'd kept I liked the Eldorado, Seville, DeVille names instead of going to the letters. But they've actually had good luck, I think, with the CTS. They feel like the CTS brand has developed well, that naming scheme, CTS, CTSV, and now with the ATS. Although, again, my position is the ATS is not selling well and that Cadillac needs to do something significantly different. And it's not just replace the front badge with one without a wreath. I don't think that's going to drive the ATS sales up by a factor of 3.
No, they what are the powertrains they have out right now in the showrooms?
The 2.5 liter
unaspirated,
4, normally aspirated with 202 horsepower. The 2-liter turbo, 272 horsepower, 295 pound-feet of torque this year, and the 3.6-liter normally aspirated with 321 horsepower.
Okay, how does that compare to similarly priced BMWs in performance-wise?
Similar. Now, here's the trickiness. The BMW 2-liter turbo has less crank horsepower. It's rated at less crank horsepower, but it gets better performance than the 2-liter turbo ATS.
Well, I think
and the same thing with the 335i, that it's rated for 300 horsepower, but it's actually making something more than that.
I think this was a little sleight of hand on BMW's part. They had Cadillac designed to a car that wasn't being built. And this is a problem when you look at the competition instead of the market. And I think that what they really need is more oats in the drivetrain and blow away the competition.
Well, and this is what my advice was, right, is you have to bring 50, 75 horsepower more than BMW in order to achieve the same performance. Now, part of the problem, though, is the ATS is trapped in the 6-speed transmission, didn't get the 8-speed transmission that the CTS got. And part of that is the GM 8-speed is late to market, which is a normal problem for GM, right? That's the old GM, is everything's late to market. And, I used to work for a company that was in the laptop business, and literally if they got a laptop 6 months late to market, they had to throw them away.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, they couldn't sell them. We would end up bringing them into the company, on the business side of the company, everybody get a new laptop because they were 6 months late to market and missed the premium pricing.
Well, if you want a huge market share, I think they probably are going to have to wait till next year with ATS, and they're going to have to think about the market and not the competition, and focusing on what they're going to do. They need to do what you advise, namely, just bring the best car they can to market.
Right.
And if they want to dial in the horsepower for expandability in future years and this kind of thing, they can go through that navel gazing game if they want. But frankly, I would just do everything that the warranty and reliability numbers allowed and just go for it.
Every car needs to be manufactured to be the best car that model can be. So in other words, you make the ATS with the 8-speed transmission, you make it with the best 3.6 liter V6 you've got, you let it be the best car it could be. You let the CTS be the best car it could be on that platform, extended ATS platform, and let it be more upmarket so it's got features the ATS can have. But the ATS, to be competitive for its competition, it's got to have an 8-speed transmission. So you can't say, I'm not going to give the 8-speed transmission to the ATS because I want you to buy a CTS, because the ATS is competing with the BMW that's got an 8-speed transmission. So,
well, I don't think it absolutely positively has to have an 8-speed transmission, but the driving experience has to be better than that of the other cars.
Oh, it is. It is right now, but some people are always going to look and say, well, the 0 to 60 time on the ATS is slower than the 0 to 60 time on the BMW 328i, so I'm going to get the BMW.
Yeah, that'd be my thinking.
You have to beat them in every category. It's not good.
Right.
It's not good enough to meet them in every measure. You have to beat them in every category.
Yeah, but the number of gears in the transmission, I don't think is as important as the 0 to 60 time. Or if you get into the car, how does it feel when you drive? If you feel a big gap between low and second, and the 6-speed that you do not feel in the 8-speed, that might be important to the discriminating driver.
No, but I think the 8-speed is taking away half a second, 0 to 60, something in that order.
Second?
I think it's significant.
Well, that's okay. Well, like I said, there is a big gap between low and second, even with a 6-speed.
Now, why would that be if you're only going to shift from first to second? You're only using 2 gears, but the 8-speed could be geared higher, right? The BMW boxes tend to be sprint boxes instead of the Cadillacs tend to be
street
boxes that support the way you'd want to drive, right?
Yeah.
Not set up, shift.
Yeah. Right.
So I don't know. I now that you challenge that statement, I wonder if there is an argument there. If I'd have to run a simulation where we put the BMW gearbox in on the ATS and then see if that made a difference.
That would take a lot of work to bring out any real advantage, because integration on that big a change through the PCM is just non-trivial. It's really a big job.
Oh, no, I wouldn't do it in real life. I mean, I'd run it in the simulator.
Oh, yeah.
It's not that much work. I'm not volunteering to write a check for this.
Well, if the quarter mile is 2 gears, well then you really want to pick both gears to optimize the quarter mile time. And if you you can't tell me that the 6-speed is geared for the quarter mile, because the low gear is 4 to 1. That's an enormous gear. And my CTS-V, that low gear makes it extremely easy to drive in supermarket parking lots. And it makes for very gentle, well-controlled takeoffs in heavy traffic. And this is extremely important to everyday drivability in difficult conditions. But I will also say that it makes traction a real problem, and that there's a big jump between low and second, which means you're not getting the ETs in the second gear range that you would get if the second gear were lower.
Right.
And you're not getting the traction and the ETs you would get if the low gear wasn't higher. So this gets back, remember I threw out a 16-speed and everybody thought about a transmission was always shifting, did it just a little bit all the time, and that wasn't what I was talking about at all. If you have a 16-speed transmission, you don't go through the gears one at a time. You pick the gear that the PCM wants, and you skip gears. You skip 1 or 2 gears most of the time, most shifts. But the gear you want is always there. So if they just have 4 planetaries, or 5 planetaries if you want a separate one for reverse, this gives you a total of 16 ratios, and you always have the right one at hand in the PCM within a couple of percent. So that to me is saying that's ending the game with this firm statement, I win. and if they're going to the number of planetaries required to do that now. What they need is the technology to do the efficient shifting, the gear selection, and the efficient shifting.
Now here's the citation: is Motor Trend when they tested the BMW 2012 BMW 335i versus a 2013 ATS 3.6. So the ATS 3.6 had 20 more horsepower.
Mm-hmm.
It had a lower weight to power ratio, 11 pounds versus 11.9 for the BMW.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, which again suggests that it should do better 0 to 60, do better in acceleration because it weighs less, has more power and weighs less. The 0 to 60, the BMW did 4.8 seconds. The Cadillac did 5.5.
That's bad.
So that's 0.7 seconds difference.
That's a long time.
And that stayed through the quarter mile. So 13.4 for the BMW, 14 for the Cadillac. So
that's the transmission you're saying.
That's my supposition is the cars are identical if you have, the BMW makes more torque down low, so that's fair.
That's important.
But it's got an 8-speed automatic instead of the 6-speed automatic.
Yeah, you're right. I was just about to say the torque curve is important too, as well as the horsepower. The peak horsepower is counts once you get to the top end of second gear, keep near red line. But the takeoff, the first half of the 0 to 60 time, the torque curve and the low gear ratios are important.
Now the BMW, the one they tested, cost $55,000, and so as we've seen, a premium ATS 3.6 liter would be up above in that range, just above that range. Because by the time I got a premium 2-liter when we were shopping it, I think it rung up to 53. And so they're right on top of the BMW pricing, and that's where they feel like they can be. But what they're missing is that the BMW is selling 3 times as many cars as the ATS, and that they need to swallow their pride and price the ATS like it's the competitor.
I think they need to do that until they can beat it on the 0 to 60 time.
And even though the 0 to 60 doesn't matter in the real world, I mean the 5 to 60 is probably the reverse, right? I don't think they showed 5 to 60 in this test.
No, who's a car and driver used to do that? Do they still do that?
Somebody had brought that up again recently, and again, 5 to 60. What happens in 0 to 60 is for these tests, the magazine writers will rev the car up to red line or close to red line, drop the clutch, and get the car off as fast as possible, regardless of whether it tears up the tires, the transmission.
Mm-hmm.
And so 5 to 30 is kind of a test that shows what are you more likely to see in the real world.
Yeah.
So if Jim and I were lined up at a light and we both started rolling, suddenly Jim revs up his engine, floors his throttle, and I say, okay, I'm going to go with it. Then I floor my throttle. That's what you'll get 5 to 60, right? Is nobody had the engine revved up to red line. Nobody was brake clutching against the transmission without regard for whether it tore up the transmission or not. And you see more real world performance, right?
Right.
But yeah, they didn't show that in this article, so I guess I just wasted that whole description. But I don't know.
Second gear with my rear final drive ratio is pretty well matched for my car. It would work as a low gear, but it is second gear is its best gear. If you put that thing in second gear and if the traction is good, it will hold and it moves like the hand of God.
Now, the other thing the turbo BMW is going to have, though, is more low-end torque. And so I'd actually have to see one of the new 2014 ATSs to see if the higher torque of the 2-liter turbo is helping. But I don't think it's gotten below 5 seconds in any test. So that's what I'd like to see is Cadillac figure out a way to get the ATS below 5 seconds.
Yes.
Which is where their competition is, and they've got to be testing versus the competition, so this cannot be a surprise to the engineers.
It probably was in the sense that they found out about it too late to change the horsepower rating on the motor.
But the BMWs have been doing that forever.
Oh yeah.
I mean
Well, like Lucy in the football. That's what the game is.
yeah, but I mean they didn't
General
come out.
Motors is not innocent of that either.
That didn't change the 2012 BMW 3-liter turbo in order to make it quicker than the ATS is what I'm saying. That car was out there when the ATS was being
Oh, I see.
developed.
Yeah.
BMWs were doing less than 5 seconds, 0 to 60 times, and so that should not have been a surprise to anybody at Cadillac that that's where their competition was. Now, if you said, yeah, but Bruce, we're not, our owners are not running magazine tests. Our owners are driving the car in the real world. They're wanting, we're tuning the transmission so that it responds well to the way they're going to drive in real life. And
But if they don't get in the car, drive it, and buy it, they'll never know that.
There you go. If we can't sell them a car, then they won't find that out, will they?
That's right.
And I think that's the perfect summary for us to wrap up the evening tonight. And we missed our friend Texas Jim this week.
Oh,
Jim,
yeah.
I hope you're doing well. We've
Yeah.
had weather here in the area, and so he may have been caught out in the rain and so on. If you're watching there at home, sorry, we didn't see any questions come through, but if you had questions, please feel free to post them in the appropriate thread in the forum, and we will try and add to or respond to questions there. Jim, any last words for our audience tonight?
Well, I want to apologize for blanking to take that phone call. It was extremely important matter that I simply couldn't postpone. But I had a good time here tonight, and I learned a lot answering the questions and posed a couple of my own. I think that just thinking through the answers, I learned a lot by teaching myself.
Having you offline, I'm sure was amusing to those watching because it was like, what the heck is Bruce going to talk about now? There's not even anybody on. So perfect. And again, anyone watching this in between shows, if you do want to participate here on the CaddyInfo Cadillac chat, we're happy to have other Cadillac enthusiasts. CaddyInfo is a Cadillac fan site where we almost everybody owns a Cadillac, and we enjoy talking about the cars and the trucks and the history, the old cars, the new cars, all the cars, and occasionally classics and replicas as well. And so if you do own a Duke replica, you're welcome to join us at the Classics Replica Forum or other similar cars.
Was there a replica for a V12 Cadillac out there?
I haven't found one yet. That would be a fun car to have.
Mm-hmm.
That I would love to have a V12. Between V12 or a V16 Cadillac are probably on my, if they didn't cost $1 million, are probably on my short list, right, for cars. I love V12s and V16s anyway, and so I would love having one of those. But I'd be tempted to swap an LS3 in there instead.
If you ever saw one of those overhead valve V12 Cadillac engines, you wouldn't be tempted to swap it with anything. They're a thing of beauty.
Oh no, they were beautiful. Yeah, and they did two completely different V16s. I mean, they brought out the first one in 1929. The market crashed. They soldiered on. They brought out a completely different engine in this luxury only car. Unbelievably.
Yeah, a flathead.
Oh, imagine.
Yeah.
They what were they thinking? So
keeping on soldiering.
Keeping on soldiering like I wish they'd done in the 80s, and some of those cars could have raised the bar instead of. And actually, I think it was in 1976 when they panicked, along with everybody else, and sales were going through the floor, and fuel was a problem. And when I wish they'd had a little more fortitude and stuck to their brand.
But when they finally came out with the Chevrolet Inline 6, they cloned half of that Cadillac V6.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, fun.
Yeah.
Half of the V12 was the inline 6 was half of the V12?
Oh, yeah.
Great. I did not know that.
I wouldn't be surprised the valve covers weren't interchangeable.
There you go.
The manifolds weren't because the block wasn't tilted, but it looked like they might bolt up.
Good. So if you do want to learn how to do Google Plus Hangouts and you want to be with us on the video, let me know that. If you don't know how, if you do know how, then great. Let me know. Contact me on Google Plus so that I can make sure that you get invited to our invite list, and that way you get an invitation each week that you care to participate. Hold on, Jim, and I'll hit stop broadcast. Thanks
Okay.
for watching.